I'm really excited to welcome Amanda to talk to us all, and she's been a member of the business club since the very start, and big supporter of Willen Hospice. So we're very grateful for Yelloyoyo's support. And what they do is they're very much a brand clarity business. So they're all about helping businesses understand what their brand actually is, and developing those for businesses of all different sizes. So she works with smaller SMEs through to national companies, local clients, including our business club members, Jeffrey Lever Solicitors. She did a big rebrand project for them. My Milton Keynes, their branding, she's responsible for University of Buckingham and the Community Foundation, through to some big national names like Amazon, Canon, Argos, Virgin and Philips as well. So she really knows her stuff, and what Yelloyoyo do is they work with businesses to come up with strategies and marketing messages and execution to make sure that everything is consistent and spot on, and all about really understanding what your brand is. So she's going to be outlining basically the core principles of branding that every business should consider, and giving us a 15-minute summary, condensed, of everything we need to know. So I'm very delighted to welcome our speaker today, Amanda Wright from Yelloyoyo.
Marvellous. So why is brand important? Interestingly, if you ask Alexa, which I did yesterday, because you never know, she told me that it's important because a brand creates not just loyalty from your customers, but also from your staff. And she's absolutely right. But what's interesting as well to consider is, and this statement really shows it, this statement typifies businesses that don't understand and appreciate the power and depth of a brand. So it's fair to say that most companies don't realise that what they could be until they start to express their brand in an optimal way for their market. We can all think of the retail casualties, can't we? Those who failed because of a lack of ability to maximise what they do. Think Debenhams, BHS, House of Fraser at the moment, and how they're struggling and will probably disappear, to be perfectly honest. So what I wanted to do today was not just to talk at you, but I wanted to give you some takeaways, because I think that's important, to give you something to be thinking about going forward, and something that you might be able to use. So I'm going to share, following this, I'm going to share with Chris a couple of things that you can use as exercises to do yourselves, which might be useful for you. So this is a question we often get asked. Which of these is more important? What is it? Is it the logo? Is it what you do with it? What's the most important thing about a brand? So your first takeaway today from me is priority. And priority from our side, number one priority has to be brand. Brand is what you believe in. It defines your purpose and your promise. It's the story of why you're different, why you are better. And it's why your customers, or it should be why your customers, believe in you. Next comes design, and design illustrates all aspects of the brand, inspiration and consistency. And it gives you then the ammunition for your marketing. And this is really an articulation of your story, an invitation for your customer to take part, to participate. And it gives, you gain the right customer insight, and you tell them why they should believe in you. And then they, of course, become your advocates. They become your brand ambassadors, because the most important thing is to maximize your marketing spend. You get your story right, and you build your brand and articulate it, and then it will all work in a perfect circle. So that would be my first takeaway, is to prioritize what you do. And the Yelloyoyo way of working is a very simple cycle. It has to start with the future research. You've got to know where you're going, what your ideal positioning will be, in order to know whether you've reached that goal. And armed with that research for that ideal positioning, you can then tackle how to get to that ideal position. And those elements that we outline underneath there, the ones in orange, brand story, purpose, promise, are all of the elements that will go together to make sure that that ideal positioning is established, which then gives you a route map and a brief in order to do any of the design work. Now, I'm not going to show anything design-wise today. You've probably seen some of the stuff that Yelloyoyo has done, but it's all about bringing the story to life. And all of those elements underneath that in that list will then help you to have the platform, the brand platform, and your ammunition to start with your marketing strategy, telling that brand story and allowing your customers to be your advocates, which then should inform everything you do back into the data, allowing you to make sure your KPIs are in place, that your revenue is going right in the right direction, that your data is informing your decisions to tweak you back to your research. And again, that cycle never stops. And it's something that you should be using, we consider you should be using at all times. Because of course, brand is all about that journey. Brand is just a journey. And the perception path at Yelloyoyo that we use, and we help all sizes of businesses from startups. And of course, a startup starts at the bottom of that list as an invisible entity. And through gaining trust and visibility with a customer, the intention is to rise up that pathway, that perception path. Very few become indispensable. And of course, indispensable is time sensitive. Think how Mothercare used to be the go-to brand for anything to do with baby care and children and anything you needed for a baby. Mothercare are off the map now. Think of how indispensable Amazon Prime has become and Zoom has become for us all in the last few months. Our aim at Yelloyoyo is to get you to at least irresistible. That is our aim. There's one more I, of course, in there, and I just mentioned Mothercare. That's irrelevant down at the bottom. And that's not where you'd ever want to be as a brand, but it's something that you should certainly be taking account of in everything you do when you analyze your perception position. We use a matrix at Yelloyoyo to help with that perception path. Now, the two matrices, trust and need, will form where you sit on that journey. The one place you want to be, of course, is loved. You want to be highly trusted and needed by your customers. And we can put those four sections to make it a bit clearer for you there. You've got your known brands, your commodities, your toilet roll. You've got your respected brands, the ones that you have to have and that you respect. But where you would always want to be as a brand is treasured and loved as a hero. And those points I spoke about on that perception path sit within those four quadrants. Irrelevant, of course, is down in the southwest, and is indispensable up in the northeast is where you really want to be. Now we look at those, and of course it's all in the eye of the beholder. But at the moment, just plotting some on there to just help with how those might sit. WD-40. It's not going to excite you. Well, maybe it is for some people, but it doesn't excite me. But it does do a job, and it certainly has a place. It's a trusted brand. Marmite sits in the middle because for some people it is a love-hate brand. Some people they have to have it every morning. Other people don't want to touch the stuff. But I think no one can deny that Prime, Amazon Prime, Apple, you could put Zoom up in that top quadrant. My daughter will put ASOS or Boohoo or Pretty Little Things up in the top right hand. And, Kleenex down in the bottom left could sit with, I don't know, Heinz baked beans, something like that. It's a staple. There's a degree of love for it. And then you've got the wanted ones, bottom right. TikTok is kind of rising up towards a treasured brand potentially, but it's of a time. it's transient to a degree, so it's going to move. And then, of course, you've got the ones that haven't moved. Primark, you know, there's an ethical issue with Primark. Many people, many younger guys won't care so much about that because they get their fashion cheap as chips and they're happy with that. But it hasn't been available for the last few months because its online offering is disastrous. It doesn't have one here. So it's going to float it to a different area on your map. Debenhams, wow, that was a mainstay, wasn't it, in the retail on the high street, sinking down left and possibly to even disappear. You could say John Lewis closing stores is an issue for John Lewis, and they're only going to survive because of their online status, but they are going to sink potentially down towards the southwest. So it's an interesting way to look at that. Let's go back to where we were at the start, and let's assume now you've done some research and you're now going to look at the future section. So on that pathway, understanding the future allows you to plot the conditions and the influences. You cannot think about your brand's position without having an eye on the future. If you're in the legal profession, just think about how important paralegals are to your bottom line at the moment, and think how there are algorithms that will mean that those paralegals could be out of a job shortly, because what could be done in a few hours or in maybe a few days could potentially be done in just a few minutes in the future. Making sure that you have an ecosystem of partners, and there's a list here and you can read them through, but there are a lot of things that you need to have an eye on in the future. Making sure that you're part of a connected living system of your ecosystem of your customer. The coronavirus, look at the implications of that, and how is that going to change the way we think about our brands for the future. And international instability, that's going to have influences on, even if you sell I don't know, cleaning products, it might make a difference to your supply chain, what's going on in the rest of the world. So you do need to have an eye on what's going on there. So a brand strategy to plot your ideal position, it's all about your why. It's about your purpose, your who, your customer, and your services. So your who, your why, and your what. And those all together should be wrapped around by a story. And a story is what makes your brand have a deeper and more meaningful relationship with your customer. Now, your ideal position, I need to tweak that to adjust your brand platform accordingly, has a lot of different components that go together. And all of those on there will show you our list that we have of P's that we use for a platform. So what makes a brand would be your second takeaway, and that would be your platform. Don't underestimate the importance of equalizing all of those components. And I would say that the ones on the left there, that list of 7, is probably the most important list there. We could take all day discussing how to look at your platform, but really it's a very important thing to take account of. And there's a list of more detail there. But what's really important, it used to be just 3 Ps, didn't it, for marketing? It used to be product, price, promotion. But we find that this gives brands a more rounded picture of what their brand platform ought to be, because as you have to make sure that all of these things are working effectively, because if they're not, there will be dysfunction in your brand. If you're not coming true on the promises that you set, if your brand perception sinks by something that happens online, if you don't respond to your Glassdoor comments that your employees are putting up, if you allow that to lapse, there are all points at which you need to make sure that these are working in synergy. So let's go back to the components. Takeaway 3 is your purpose and your promise. So a lot of people would know that as your why. Your why you do what you do, the real reason that you're important to your customer. You need to distill that down to your promise. What is it that makes you the right tool for the job? Now, when it comes to our purpose and promise at Yelloyoyo, our purpose is to inspire every client we work with to have the clarity, capability and confidence to become irresistible in terms of relationship with their staff and their customers. Now, that's not really very snappy, but that is our purpose. So our promise is that we will make you irresistible, and that is what we promise to our clients. And that, it's a tall order, but it's important to live to your promise. The next circle is your customer. You have got to be engaged emotionally with your customer. You've got to be connected so that you can show that you can solve their problems and that you understand your problems, that you know what their problems are. And the customer is the one who's in charge of this relationship. Knowing your customer and becoming part of their ecosystem. Every one of you will have a connected living ecosystem. You could put against all of these orange words here, retail, homes, you could put brands in there that are part of your ecosystem. And you want to be a part of their ecosystem. And underneath there, you've got the foundation ecosystem, where your technology and connectivity comes from, where you store your data, your payment infrastructure. Being part of a connected living ecosystem of your customer is important, because what used to be supply and demand is now demand to supply. Jobs identified that it wasn't about the tech. Because to be truly useful, of course, the technology must be seamless. You must always start with the customer. Next, it comes to services and positioning. So we're in that lower section of our story matrix, top right. And this is what you do with your relationships to positioning. The strategy and future that you've plotted on your route to your positioning and defining how you should deliver your services. So a bit of advice here. We say on here, where is your gap in the market that you can stand out on? Be different, but don't just be different, be better. Be narrow, not wide. Have the smallest viable audience. That's a Seth Godin quote. Don't try to sell everything to everybody. We could brand any business, but we talk about branding service industry businesses because it makes us have a smaller viable audience. Now, the takeaway 4 from me would be absolutely key to part of this, to all parts of this, and that's values. Principles and values are absolutely crucial. If you're not telling your story with authenticity, your customers will know. You need to make your customers love you so that every single point at which you're front of mind when there's a requirement, and you should hire and fire on those values. They should guide everything you do, drop a filter through everything that you do. Takeaway 5 is perception. How do you want to be perceived by your clients? This all hinges around your relationships and processes, the outcome of the work you do, and the sum of all experiences. And again, this is owned by your customer, not by you. It's how you need to be conceived, to be perceived, and it needs to be a genuine and authentic conversation that you're having with your customers, because they really, truly, they will know. And that's where the story helps, because the story can help to guide that authenticity. If you can create a story that your customers will engage with and be part of, it's going to make for a much deeper conversation. What are you going to do to change their world? It needs to be a bigger conversation than just your business and to engage with hearts and minds. So as an example, I'm going to talk to you about Hewitt Denim. Now, David Hyatt created Hewitt Denim, and they make jeans. And this is what he said: "We make jeans, that's it, nothing else, no distractions, nothing to steal our focus, no kidding ourselves that we'd be good at anything else. We're not trying to conquer the whole world. We just do our best to conquer our bit of it. So every day we come in and make the best jeans we know how. We use the best quality denim, cut them with an expert eye, and then let our grandmasters behind the sewing machines do the best. There is a great deal of satisfaction to be gained from making something well of such superior quality that you know it's going to stand the test of time." Now, he decided to do this one thing, and yes, he makes his denim really well. They do one thing well, but what's really important was they got behind the town that they do this in Cardigan in Wales. It's a town of 4,000 good people, and 400 of them used to make jeans, and they made 35,000 pairs a week for 3 decades. And then one day that factory closed, it left town, and all the skills and know-how remained without any way of showing the world what they could do. So he decided that his mission, his story, was that he was going to take manufacturing back home, to use all that skill on the doorstep and breathe new life into the town. So what he intends to do is that he's going to bring 400 people back to work manufacturing these jeans, and they're going to be one of the most expensive jeans you can buy, but they're going to last you forever, because every time they wear out, you send them back and they will restitch them and they will send them back to you. So his story is so much deeper than just being a jeans manufacturer. He's getting 400 people back to work, and that is his intention. So for him, that's a story that will engage and connect and inspire, and then will keep. And that's what you need to do, without doubt, as a brand. And as a brand, for us, we're a brand business, and we keep ourselves to being narrow, not wide, by saying that we are a service industry specialist, and that we bring clarity for all of those things that I mentioned there. It's all about focus and clarity, and our promise to be irresistible. And so there are your takeaways. I can, as I said, I can supply you with some an example of how to find your values and perception. As a brand, you may already have those, but you might find it useful to look at our list. It might give you some fuller options to think about. So thank you very much for listening, and I'd love to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Amanda. That was so interesting. It was just so much information in 15 minutes. That was brilliant. So I'm sure everyone's got some questions. Hopefully you've not had your mind blown too much by that. Fire away. Has anyone got any questions for Amanda?
I was going to ask you, Amanda, I think right at the beginning you said the key to your brand and the way you present yourself is authenticity. I know you and I have had many conversations about that, about people wanting to do business. And my sector, recruitment, is not a sector that is very known for that. It's quite a commoditised sector. I think it's really difficult to stand apart from other people and get your personality out there. I'm just wondering whether you had any tips for, seeing as I'm relaunching a business now, how to really differentiate myself and get hopefully my character and my drive out there, as opposed to just a brand that's been around for a long time but was made up of different characters.
I think one of the, knowing you as I do and knowing your business, I think one of the differentiators for you, Michelle, is your character, is your relationships that you build. You are very, very good at reading the room, and you appreciate that everybody has a very different need. And I think you listen, and so I've worked with many recruitment agencies. I've been headhunted and worked with others, and the difference that you would bring, and I think the difference for anybody, is to ensure that their personality comes across, because relationships are everything, and what you do, trust is absolutely paramount. So making sure that you create and retain that relationship, and your tone of voice reflects that, so that everything that you do, has that clarity and authenticity. And I think you have that in Shed Loads. So I think that's what you bring.
I think what you've shown a lot there, Amanda, is how actually it's really important to have somebody else look at your business from the outside to kind of help you understand what your business actually is. It's a lot harder for you to see it from within sometimes than to have somebody else kind of have a different perspective on things.
I think that's right. I think it is often people running their own business have got there because they have a particular skill, and that skill might not be the analysis of a business process. So yeah, definitely having the ability to have fresh eyes that can analyze maybe in a different way, and also looking across different sectors as well to learn from other sectors. In that sense would be a useful thing to do, I would say.
Great. Has anyone got any more questions?
Yeah, I know it's a difficult one to answer because there's different types of clients that you work with, but if you can, what does a typical sort of sales engagement look like when you're dealing with a customer? Will it be an initial exploratory type of meeting, and at what point do you start to really get under the skin of, I don't know, redeveloping the brand or relaunching the brand? How does it work exactly?
We come into projects at lots of different points. So it's great to get involved at the top bit with the futures and go all the way around the outside, but often we'll be invited to help with a website, for example, and often when we are approached to help with something like a website, we'll find that actually it's not the website that's the issue. It's a bit, you can't just redo a website. You can't just make a website quicker. It would be a bit like just republishing a book with a different cover. You've got to think about the content that goes in. So often we would be approached to do certain projects and then find that actually it makes sense to go backwards and look at the issues that may not have been identified by the client that actually will help to make that process better going forward. So there are lots of different points at which we get involved, Stuart, in a process. It's not necessarily at the very, very beginning. It's always good to be at the beginning, but a discovery meeting that we always hold a discovery meeting at the beginning. A bit like we also have chemistry meetings where we make sure that there's a nice rapport that goes on between us, because it's all about relationships. But that discovery meeting will allow us to start to unpick. We're not an agency that we're going to challenge you. We're going to say, is that what you need? And actually sometimes we do ourselves out of projects because it's not the thing you need. You maybe need something else that isn't quite that, but actually it makes we sleep at night knowing that we've given the right advice. So we wouldn't necessarily take on a project to redo something that didn't need redoing. It was just a little bit of tweaking that was required instead. So there are lots of different points, but a discovery meeting where we can just understand and unpick what's required is how we would always start off our process.
Perfect.
If that
Cheers.
answers the question.
It does. And thanks as well. The presentation was great.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's definitely one of those things that often you don't realise how much work needs to be done because you just sat there in blissful ignorance, and suddenly someone opens your eyes and you think, oh, actually, yeah, there's so much that we could do better that we just haven't really thought about. So thank you very much, Amanda. That was amazing. And Amanda is a member of the Business Club, so we will see her every month. So if you have any questions in the future, she's always here, always happy to help.